Hello. In this tutorial I want to talk about the render settings and layer settings. These are closely related. Objects can be put in layers, and the render engine can be configured to do quite a lot of things. You can optimize it, you can set the accuracy of it, how long it renders, how many samples it does, how many rays it shoots out into the environment. Object can be separated into layers so that they can be rendered separately, affected by other objects without including them in the render. So you can this is very necessary and useful for the compositing. So I'm starting off with the scene we had last time, and it's actually a good setup. These frames we have here, we don't need this frame for what we're going to do. We don't need the material, so we can kind of just block it by dragging the triangle down. We don't need these toolbars on the left. You can press T to remove them. Put your mouse over the two views and press T. Sometimes there is another toolbar on the right. You remove that by pressing N. You add it and remove it by pressing N. So first of all, if we look at the render settings, it's always available here in the properties panel. No matter what object you have selected, it's always the same, this one. Other things change. Everything right of this box here changes, is part of the object you've selected, but these first four, I believe, are constant and relate to everything as a whole. The first one is the render engine configuration. Now, if you have cycles rendered, the options you have will look like this. If you have another render engine selected, they will be different. Let's just press the default render just to see what happens. There is a default setup in every Blender file, and if we press render, it will go through the scene from the camera that is the default camera and render it. It's quite a noisy image, it's not perfect, but it's maybe a good preview. There is also an animation rendering key here. It will then, if you press that one, it will go through a lot of frames to render. It will go from this start frame here under the dimension settings. It will go from the start frame to the end frame. And here on timeline you can see those frames. Obviously there's no point in doing that in our case because we have no animation, we have nothing moving. Okay, so the camera isn't moving, the objects aren't moving, there's no point in doing that. So you can see no change. We can have it anywhere we like. So we're just gonna work on a single frame in this example. The resolution is by default set to 50% of a HD resolution, so it's actually is that 720? No, that's not even 720, but whatever. If you set it to 100, you get the full HD, but it's often you're just trying to do a quick preview, so it's useful to just tune this down, and you're just doing a quick preview, you get like a really fast render. Okay, so that is probably the reason why you have this choice here. Let's keep it at 50. I think the third most important thing to know about the render engine settings is to go here into sampling, and that decides how much noisy your image is. The more rays you shoot out each pixel and average, the more accurate the measurement on that pixel will be. So you have two choices here: the render 10 rays per pixel, and the preview set to 10 rays per pixel by default. Now, it's very typically, if you're doing a render, for like a final render, you should be putting this into a few hundred, maybe even 1,000. So, we can put this to 100 and it would look a lot better. Even the preview, it doesn't harm to put it a lot higher. It will just improve a little bit. Okay, so time is getting on. I will continue to the next one. But now I have it set so that it will render even a little bit better in the preview. The fourth thing is the light paths. The light paths is really about optimizing the render engine. You can achieve good results by taking approximations, taking fewer bounces. Default you're setting something like 8 bounces, maximum of 8 bounces, and that's quite good for photorealism. Every time a light ray bounces, it gets reduced in energy, and you could kind of imagine at over 8 bounces it would be reduced to quite a little amount of energy and wouldn't have so much effect. But you can set optimize here for various types of reflections, but not necessary to think about for now. Now I'm going to get straight on to the idea of layers. What is going on when we press the render button here is that a particular render layer, default render layer, is being rendered. It's in the second tab here. There's a default render layer set up, and it has some rather hard to read settings. It's selecting a bucket here, 1 of 10, from the scene, but rendering everything else from all the other buckets. So what I would like to say is that every object can be assigned to a particular bucket. If we look down here in the viewport, we can see these buckets again, the scene buckets, the scene layers, and there's some dot in the first bucket and it's selected. This means that there are objects in that bucket when there's a dot. So there's no object in any of the other buckets, and there's no point in selecting them. But we can move an object like the monkey. We can move him to another render layer bucket by going to the location property panel for the monkey and say moving him to layer 3 here. He disappears from the 3D view. That's because he is now located in another bucket not selected in the 3D view. You have to press shift and select that bucket to show him. Now these buckets are selected and they show in the 3D view. To be able to do proper rendering, we have to disconnect this setting here. It is something that locks the scenes, the scene bucket selection in the 3D view to the render layers, and that really causes a lot of problems for separating rendering of objects. And we should really not necessarily have that on, although it doesn't harm. Often it doesn't harm, but mostly it can be a big bother, and we'd rather not relate this to the actual render layer settings. So let's just disconnect it now and you'll feel a lot better. We go now to the render layers. We can now see we have actually, because it used to be linked, this selection was copied in here. Here we are basically in the scene section here. We are defining everything that is part of the environment, but this is not what is rendered. What's going to be rendered is here. There's way too many things selected. If we just select the first bucket to be rendered, the layer to be rendered, then we will only see the parquet when we press render. Let's try that out. And we do. We see the parquet rendered out, but with a shadow from the monkey. Now the reason why we see you can press escape to stop. The reason why we see a shadow from the monkey, even though he is not there, is because he is part of the scene. He is part of the physics, but he's not rendered. All the light is still bouncing on the monkey and bouncing on the parquet and onto the monkey. All of that is still happening, except we have made the monkey invisible to the camera, monkey itself. Obviously, if we remove the monkey, from the scene, we just have the scene layer of the parquet and the parquet layer to be rendered, then obviously the monkey it's going to be as if he's not there at all, and you will see now it's like the monkey isn't even part of the physics. So we go back to the render layer tab. Now we do mostly want to have everything in the scene, but often not want to render different things. So we can call this parquet, I don't know, or is it parquet? Probably UA, I don't know. Okay, that's French, I don't know. And we can add a monkey layer as well. Have two rendering things to be done, two images to be rendered. Now the parquet render layer is rendering the parquet. The monkey is rendering everything. We don't want that, just the monkey, just layer 3. Now if we press render, first it will render the parquet layer. And secondly it will render the monkey, but the monkey only. Okay, this kind of image view, you know, when you press escape you get out of it and you get back into the 3D view. It kind of gives you that by default when you press render, but you can always get out of it by pressing escape. However, it does, you know, it has rendered two images and you can flip between them. They show up here at the bottom in the layer selection. You can see the last render of the monkey layer render layer and the last render of the parquet render layer. What is all this gray stuff? We really don't want that. Now there's a little trick. This is very annoying for compositing. You really want to have an alpha channel with transparency everywhere you're not rendering anything. So what you have to do is you have to go into the sampling, the film part here, and press transparent. I don't know why this is not on by default. It's very mostly useful to have this on. So if we now press render again, we should hopefully see only the monkey rendered. And it seems like it takes a little while to do some sort of calculation here. Seems to want to calculate some transparencies before it renders the monkey. So now we have the monkey rendered with transparency everywhere else, and the parquet affected by the monkey but separate. The monkey obviously with reflection of the parquet, this kind of orange haze here. This tutorial is finished.